Hey listeners, Aaron here. If you're watching Fallout on Amazon Prime Video, then we have just the podcast for you. Radioactive Ramblings has joined the Lorehounds network. We are going to be breaking down the show episode by episode, making far-fetched theories and dropping some tidbits of lore. If you want to hear us ramble, tune into Radioactive Ramblings, linked in the show notes. We hope to have you join us in the wasteland.
Welcome to the Shogun podcast. We're the Lorehounds, your guides to the political intrigues of feudal Japan. I'm David.
I'm John, and this is our coverage for episode 9, titled Crimson Sky, of the FX Limited series, The Mariko Show. Shogun. Shogun is what this show's really called. We're already punchy.
Shogun. Is it my turn? Okay,
it is your turn. Leave it in.
Today. Leave it in. We're going to start off with our hot takes for the episode, and then we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion of the plot and character, along with some of our favorite moments. We've got a couple of listener feedback emails, so we'll answer those after that.
Please send us that feedback, as we love to hear your thoughts and reactions. Send it to shogun@thelorehounds.com or head to the contact page on our website, thelorehounds.com, and use the form or record us a voicemail that we can drop right into the podcast.
And I'll just push the fact that we're going to have a season wrap up. That'll drop probably about a week after the last one. So make sure to send in your feedback to those places, wherever they may be. Other than that, if you have any interest in supporting our community, our growing community, we've added a new podcast. Check us out on Supercast or Patreon. You can join the conversation. We've got an active and fun conversation. We're in the middle of doing a big reorganization too of our Discord because it's growing so much. And we've got a lot of affiliate podcasts. So we've got a lot of things going on. Check out the show notes for links to all of those things. We'll talk about a bunch of that stuff at the end of the podcast.
We sure do have a lot going on, David. I've recorded 5 of the last 6 nights trying to push the content out into the ear holes.
Got to keep the bits flowing into people's ear holes.
It's true. That's
just a weird thing. It's so weird. Anyway, carry on.
All right. Let's get the jokes out of the way now, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of jokes this episode. Boy, was this a heavy episode of Shogun.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was.
It was awesome. Anna Sawai is a monster. Mm-hmm. She is an actor. I didn't realize that she had this level of skill and depth and range in her acting. Some of her facial looks, her fighting sequences in this, the whole thing was just an incredible performance. And I just feel so lucky that we get to watch such an accomplished actor on screen, just swinging out big and just taking this role and exploding it into something that there's no way. Sorry, I had to go with the explosion joke. Another thing I wanted to mention about this scene or this episode was during the courtyard fight scene, the way that they use the camera. If you get a chance, go back and just watch that scene and watch how they push in and they use the camera with these slow push ins or pull backs. You know, it's not a zoom in. It's like the camera is like moving in closer or moving back, and they do it very subtly during different parts to ramp the tension. It's incredible. And then just the choreography and the way that the whole courtyard scene is set up, just shot by shot, absolutely incredible masterclass in television production.
The way that Mariko and some of the other noble women walk is so interesting and impressive, right? I'm not going to move my torso very much. I'm just going to very subtly move my legs forward. I'm going to be slow even when it's an urgent matter. And it's so different than the way that we walk, right? And it feels so performed but natural for them.
Do you even notice how they hold their hands in the center, the way that they hold their robes?
Yeah.
It's very precise, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
The level of detail in this is wild. I love this whole episode because it's just more theatrics from Toranaga. You know, we talked in some previous episodes about no theater, right? The right. kind of theater that nobles would put on and play in. This is a giant no theater play that Toranaga is directing real time. This whole thing with Mariko going there, it's all theater. And it's just an absolutely crazy, wild plan. And it's just incredible to watch. The last little thing I had, just besides, you know, all the things that we need to talk about, I heard on the Ringer podcast, they were talking about this, and they picked up some information from somewhere else that it was somebody who's a Japanese speaker wrote in to comment about how Toranaga and Hiromatsu were talking to each other and how they were using certain language tenses to indicate a higher degree of familiarity. And the way that they were just even using Japanese language that you and I aren't going to pick up on.
Right.
But that it's embedded in the performance, it's embedded in the dialogue, it's embedded in the way that the actors are working, so that relationship between like Toranaga and Hiromatsu is so it's all there. It's three-dimensional. It's fully I don't know what to say. It's not, there's no surface level stuff here. Everything goes 10 levels deep.
Yeah.
And I just found that to be a really incredible fact that they were paying that much attention to detail.
Well, even just this episode, I noticed they're using this dono suffix so much more than they have in previous episodes where they're usually using sama. And I looked it up, and dono is basically like one level of politeness lower. It's like a milord instead of saying my lord.
Oh, okay. So it's a little bit more casual.
Yeah,
a little bit more.
Yeah, but it's almost like I could be wrong about this, but I got the sense from my reading that it's a little bit like we're on the same level, or I'm a little bit higher than you. You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit of a put down almost. It could either be that or friendly, but it's like right. I'm not your buddy, pal, right? You know what I mean?
Right. Hey, pal.
Yeah.
Hey, my lord.
Yeah.
How you doing, my lord?
Yeah. So, I just thought like all those details really work together really well.
Yeah. So Crimson Sky, we've got a lot of character and plot stuff. I don't think I have much history. I don't think you had any history notes either.
No, for everything that came up really we've discussed before, like you did the whole poetry thing last episode. That would have been good this episode too, but we already did it. Go back to the last episode.
Right. I think that the thing that I was interested in, and I did not have a chance to research, it's been a crazy couple of days for me in real life, but I really wanted to find out more about Japanese fighting armor and then also Japanese longbow, because that made during the courtyard scene, there was a really important that two of the main dudes got taken down by bows, and then they hit but anyway, we can talk about it when we get to the courtyard scene. Right. But I'm really interested in Japanese armor, and I started to read about it. The short answer is the armor has evolved over time with materials, and as they started trading and as weaponry started to change, it's the same armor development that any other country in the world has gone through. And but it's obviously very beautiful, and it's designed basically around their fighting styles and about what they needed to do, whether you were horseback or you on where you were fighting on the ground or what have you. But yeah, there's some cool stuff. I'm going to read some more. Cool. Maybe I'll talk about it next episode.
That sounds good. That could be even in the season wrap. You could talk about whatever you want, because there's no rules anymore on the season wrap.
I'm sure Nate will have some information.
Absolutely.
Very interesting information about Japanese armor.
Absolutely.
Or if anybody else has any, definitely write in.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to read some articles on the internet. So,
well, David, cool. I'm devastated and also delighted by this whole episode. And I'm awash with emotions. I can't deal with myself right now. This was my favorite episode of TV all year for sure. So far.
It's going to be a tough season of TV to beat.
This is my number one of the year so far. I mean, there hasn't been that many, but So far, I mean, this is high quality TV.
Going to be a good top 10 year this year to rank all of our shows, because we've got some big quality. We've got The Bear coming back. We've got House of the Dragon coming back.
Yeah, maybe Rings of Power.
Maybe Rings of Power, maybe Severance. Andor, at least we don't have to put Andor into that ranking list. God, that would be hard. Sure? Yeah, because they said 25. They were very clear about 25. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
They're not going to try to push
stinks.
it out.
That stinks, but I get it.
I'd rather them, do it right and take their time with it rather than try to cram it in at the end.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Well, we have a surprise guest here, much like Mariko in the middle of the episode. We have a surprise guest to give her hot takes. Please welcome Alicia, or the recording of Alicia.
Hi, Lorehounds, maintaining the new tradition of keeping listeners to Lorehound Shogun coverage on their toes. You never know what voices or format you'll get each week. This time I'm starting with my hot take here, since I can't, unfortunately, be with the guys to record. And then I will drop in also my thoughts on the fourth key characters and events of this episode, which the guys can play as they talk through. This was actually the best episode. I know I've said that every single week, but this time I really, really mean it. But oh my God, my heart. I thought I lost nearly a year of my life, I think, just watching Mariko try to exit. And then to have that yo-yo and have it end the way that it did is just, it is heartening to see, I guess, that the Toranaga trickery from last episode works on at least some people. So Hiramatsu didn't completely die in vain. And it was also nice to see some slightly more realistic ninjas, or as they were called, shinobi. And I actually had to look this up and learn something. Ninja is the Chinese word, and shinobi no mono means one who endures or hides. Or shinobi for short. That's the native Japanese word. So I learned something there. Now, apparently on the official podcast, they say this is still a somewhat Hollywoodified version, but they showed at least that these are peasants who are just like scrapping together whatever clothing and armor they might have. The one disappointment was when the episode started and we saw the ship, I thought that might mean that Rodriguez is back. I'm worried now. I guess maybe we won't see him again. So I'll just appreciate the time with him that we had, and the time that especially he and Blackthorn had together. Okay, well, I'll hop back in later with my thoughts about the major characters and events.
Awesome. Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, scheduling wise and everything, I'm glad we were able to get your voice in. So
yeah, we have to wait until Blackthorn's first love has passed away before his love can be replaced by Rodriguez.
He's got, and then remember, Fuji's in the wings as well.
He also has a wife. Have we forgotten about that? Like, he has a wife on the other side of the ocean.
We basically
He certainly has. He's certainly forgotten about it. Well, a lot of, I was going to say fun stuff this episode, but it's not. It's not fun stuff. It's amazing stuff. It's beautifully horrific, but we got to get into it. We got to get into it, David. Shall we talk about the episode?
Sure.
I'm formally proposing
Weird pauses.
I'm formally proposing to you to be my second as we talk about this episode. That's why I'm taking such long pauses between my speech.
I gotta maybe go to somewhere. I don't know if I'm gonna, I'm gonna ghost you. I'm gonna do what the kids these days do and ghost you.
In Kiyama's defense, he was probably in the meeting where he was getting the permits for her, so she wouldn't have to die at all.
That's right. He was he was going from one office to the next, getting all the requisite stamps, and then of course they forgot one stamp, so he had to go back to the beginning and start all over again.
Darn bureaucracy. Yeah.
All right. Ishido loves his bureaucracy.
Absolutely he does. It's the only thing he knows how to do. Let's talk about the cold open quick. Sure. Let's talk about Mariko's conversion. So we saw Father Alvito was there from the start.
Yeah. Yep. A young Alvito.
Does he have a crush on her? What do you think?
That's a good question. I think he genuinely does have feelings for her. How those get translated through his priestly vows, I'm not quite sure. But there is a great fondness and affection, no doubt, from the beginning, from the very beginning. He's relating to her in a very different way, in a very gentle and intimate way.
Yeah.
And it was really surprising the level of intimacy that he went into that with, as if he did, the way the dialogue was going, it didn't sound like they knew each other before, because the guard outside was explaining to him who she was and what's been going on.
Right.
And so then the fact that he is so intimate and speaking Portuguese, English, English, I don't know, what do we call it? Inglese, and so I was kind of confused by the level of intimacy that he was showing her right from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was at first kind of talking to himself almost, and then realizing, okay, I'm new to the Japans, as John Blackthorne would say, and I need to go speak Japanese like I learned if I want to convert this woman. And well, I do think he was there on business. I think he's a true believer. I think he believes welcoming Jesus into your heart is going to save you from this depression, from this suicidal nature, and from I think it can be a very dangerous way of thinking, but I do think he believes it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And she is in a position right now where she's looking around at her life as a married woman in Japan whose father, did this stuff.
She's a disgraced samurai, right?
Yeah, really basically. And here is this other way out of all of that mess and all of that loss and sadness. There is a kind of salvation waiting for her, and that's appealing in some way. And he's there at the right time in the right place.
Right. So let's talk about that. The right time, the right place. I put this in the notes. Religion finding you at your lowest. Is it wholesome? Is it gross? Or is it somewhere in between? Or does it depend? Right?
Because if it lifts you up and gives you agency and allows you a sense of grace, that's when you need it the most, right? And whether that shows up in the form of a friend or an organization, I suppose it then depends on what the motivations of that organization are. Is it no strings attached? Whereas the Portuguese purse strings are very much attached.
Right. But then you ask, like, how does it factor in that Alvido's intentions are pretty pure here, I think.
As an individual.
And he believes that, God is doing the thing. And I think many people who, and I don't want to get into a debate on religion right now, but many people who
opened up the topic.
Okay, but let's say somebody is pretty socially conscious, but still holds their Catholic faith. I think many people say, well, I disagree with some of the actions of the bureaucracy of the organization, but I believe in the tenets of it. Therefore, I think the ends justify the means in this case. And I think that that's probably where Alvido is. And I think that's where a lot of people today who are still religious end up.
And we have a contrast with Delacqua, who is very clear about the political and financial implications. Yeah, all of those kinds of things. And Blackthorne calls it out as well. He's like, I forget what the exact line was, but they were on the deck of the ship. And he challenges Mariko about the black ship and about the financial interest that the church is playing cover for the crown in this case. So, yeah, I think it's interesting because if you took Alvito out of Catholicism of that time period and put him in, say, as a licensed clinical therapist, would he just be your friendly neighborhood therapist that's trying to help you work through some things? Or would he have been a Protestant priest? I think Alvito, as a human being, is interested in caring for people.
Right.
And he just happens to be a Catholic under this system.
So instead of a crucifix, he gives you a stress ball. He gives you a fidget spinner.
Exactly. Or a prescription if he's a psychiatrist or if he's a licensed clinical therapist.
Did you think they were rosary beads at first? Because I did.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. No, I figured that's what it was. And I figured, I mean, from the language of television, I assumed that it was the cross. That
okay. I thought, having been raised Catholic, I thought they were rosary beads because that's like a really explicitly Catholic thing compared to just general Christian.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I thought it was a great cold open. It was a great way to sort of bring the whole episode to Mariko. All right, so yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting conversation to have on religion. Maybe we'll talk about sort of that aspect of it on the season wrap because that's a deeper topic we need to spend time on.
Sure. Yeah. Agreed.
So, Lady Ochiba.
Yes,
she's the first character I want to tackle. Why don't we let Alicia set our tone for this one?
Ochiba's always kind of come across as the character who was really pulling all the strings, but this episode was where we kind of saw a little more vulnerability from her. This idea of her exercising her power from behind the man, we see its limitations in, her frustration that she can't just fix things. She has to dance around with words, which fortunately she's quite good at. But when we saw her expression when Mariko walked in, this was clearly she was glad and excited and saddened to see her all at the same time. And then watching her face fell when Mariko congratulated her on her engagement. Well, that's in case we didn't already know how she feels about that. We know this is something she's only doing because she sees no other way for herself to exercise power. It was also interesting, just, the hidden communications between the Japanese characters that they don't make completely obvious on screen. Like we saw my boy Saeki again. Thank you, Abby, for the pronunciation guide. And we saw her, Ochiba, when he was proposing, he was kind of being dismissive of her point. And she ends up slowly fanning her fan out in his direction in a very pointed way. So I was looking up the Japanese fan language for that. And the closest I could find is when you do that and it's facing downwards, it's basically like a rejection, like I'm not picking up what you're putting down. So I like to think that was just basically her fan language for fuck you. Saeki was less fun this episode. We also got in this scene, Ochiba makes another fate reference, and she says that Mariko committing seppuku is her vengeance on fate. So now we have Mariko in alignment with the other characters who are just grabbing fate and wrestling it to them, taking a bite out of it, fighting back against destiny. And yeah, I just love the entire that goodbye, that very public goodbye that she got to have with that friend from her youth, and how they had the thinnest pretense by having the Anjin there. And Mariko says, yeah, Anjin thanks the air, but Blackthorn hasn't even spoken. And everyone's just standing there witnessing this entire conversation, just understanding that these are the rules of the game. This is the only way for these two women to be able to talk like this.
Yeah, and there was a great contrast. So there was Ishido says, the heir has no interest in the barbarian. And then later, they're like, the heir wants an audience with the barbarian. So you already get a clue that it's a ruse, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think she brings up a really good point where we were last episode wondering what is... Ochiba's motivations in wanting to marry Ishido, and I think it's clear now that it's a power move for her to maintain position.
Unlimited power.
She's got limited power though, right?
Yeah,
because she's the consort wife, whatever, behind the throne, and she's at a point where she was going to start to lose power, and the only way to maintain a power position was to marry Ishido, who adores her, right? So okay,
he's a simp.
Like I gotta keep him. I gotta keep him simped, right? I gotta keep him in line, and the only way to do that is to allow him to think that I love him as well. there's a couple of things there with Saeki and stuff that are in my favorite moments of the episode.
Oh,
so
all right.
Yeah, I'm gonna save those for there. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to watch Lady Ochiba as she's trying to maneuver. When we talked about what was Mariko's mission, well, part of her mission in this was definitely to destabilize Lady Ochiba.
And I think soften the edges a little bit, right? Like there is a level of whether it's from Toranaga or from Mariko, but Toranaga did explicitly ask about Lady Ochiba and their relationship. But whether it's from either one of them, the mission is make her a little bit more willing to listen to a peace offering, to a proposal. Because I think if Toranaga could make this a bloodless transition, he absolutely will.
He absolutely
And it
would.
might happen. And that would be a really interesting way to end the series. I mean, we have this episode titled Crimson Sky, the name of his ultimate battle plan, in which comparatively very few people die. And the violence is very intimate and contained.
Right. In a courtyard.
Yeah.
Well, actually, when the shinobi show up, I suppose some more people die. There's that too. I think with the Crimson Sky idea though, right? It's do I go in with a men at arms and sort of force our way? There's no way that we're getting into that castle, without a Trojan horse strategy.
Well, the whole thing with Blackthorn is he wants to blow the sides out of the castle with cannons, right?
Sure.
That's the whole idea.
Does he have big enough cannons and enough cannons to do that? That's a big castle.
Yeah.
Right. And we're only seeing parts of it.
Yeah.
But this idea that he can socially destabilize the workings of the castle such that Ishido is shamed into losing control. Or, gosh, a whole bunch of shinobi broke in. That sucks. A whole bunch of lords and ladies died.
Right.
Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? All these bandits in the forests and all these shinobi running around our walls. But all of that serves to destabilize Ishido.
Not just destabilize, but paint him as the villain, right? Toranaga now comes in as the liberator.
Exactly. And he has cause belli, right, to come in and go, hey man, you let a bunch of shinobi in. That's not good.
And you
threatened the life of the
a high-ranking member of my fief, my
clan,
die under your watch, under your protection.
Yeah. And I don't think, at some point, going back to Lady Ochiba, she as a woman in this society only has so much power and it has so many strings that she can pull. And she's not able to command the armies and, she's not out there on the front leading the troops. So she's always working in the shadows, but that's only going to go so far in this situation.
I think she is as smart as Mariko, maybe a little bit less.
I think she's less smart. Yeah.
But
Mariko, a little bit.
It's really interesting. Mariko is a much more complex character, it almost feels like, right? She's got this, she's got these various sides, but Lady Ochiba, I think there's more to her than meets the eye too. And later, I do think she's on a similar level to Mariko. I think it's like, if I'm somebody who watches professional chess all the time, I could probably tell you what they're doing as they're doing it, but I might not be able to think of it on the fly. And so maybe Mariko is the professional chess player and Ochiba is the one watching from the sidelines.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and Mariko's a gifted linguist, a strong fighter, kind of a student of human psychology and motivation, where Lady Ochiba is just power maneuvering, right? She's like angling and moving people, where Mariko is in her poetry. So, we see that time and time again where she gets called, oh, your poetry was always so good. Oh, you were, things came so easy to you. We watched her, fight training as she's young. And I have to say, going back to what the writer's room and the showrunners were able to do in terms of building characters, building Ochiba. She only came in at 5 and we already know so much about her. Mariko we've had, but they've built her. The way that they're building the backstories of these characters is so interesting and so detailed that we get this richness about their motivations. We get the actions that are happening now in the penultimate episode that make total sense for where their characters, even though we could have never predicted them in this spot, they're acting like their characters.
Yeah.
And we understand the motivations. That's really incredible writing.
It is. It is. I really like when Lady Ochiba is giving advice to Ishido. And he's like, well, what advice do you have for me? What should I do? And she's kind of like, you wanted the job, do the job. She goes, she trapped you. That's what she basically tells Ishido is like, there is no answer to this. She's trapped you. Right.
I guess Checkmate. Maybe for the, because I know some people were like, wait, what was going on? The fact that, and let's advance this conversation about Mariko because we have already sort of been. I was wondering what were the orders that Toranaga gave to her. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, it was just a really simple instruction. Show up and get my ladies, my wife and consort or whatever, and bring them out. Period. That's all. That's all he needed to tell her to do.
I agree.
And she went in and she's just like, my Lord gave me an instruction. Do this, and if I don't do this, then I am dishonored, and therefore I need to remove myself.
Right.
And no matter what, and as Lady Ochiba says to Ishido, no matter what you do, she's got you.
Yeah,
you're checkmated. Yeah. You've either lost credibility among the standing of all the lords, or you let her go and you lose all strategic advantage by having hostages.
Right. Right. She won in that moment in a bloodless strike, which is insane.
Right.
Completely unexpected. This was such a great twist. Is just, well, I was just sent to fetch, and also what a perfect situation.
Yeah.
To cause Ishido to become the villain. It's not just Mariko who's well liked and people love her and she's great at poetry and she's publicly calling this out, but it's also the other lord's infant son. Mm-hmm. Infant son. You're going to stop a baby from leaving?
Right.
Boy, oh boy. It's not a good look. It's not a good look, Ishido.
Not a good look at all. And this whole idea of, well, nobody's prisoner, but everybody's prisoner.
Right.
It's a really unstable position. But he can't come out and say you're prisoner because then it's a kind of act of war.
Right.
So I guess, going with the shinobi plan was kind of an interesting solution to the problem where it was one step removed. Oh, I don't know. Yabashige let him in. I don't know anything about that. Like they were bandits in the forest. They got into the castle. Oops, my bad.
Yeah, but nobody's going to believe that.
Nobody's going to believe that. Everybody's going to know.
See, that's the thing.
Plausible deniability.
Ishido tries to be as tricksy as Toranaga, but he's not smart enough and not subtle enough to do it.
No.
Because Toranaga would never hire these fucking amateurs to do this. You tell people to get somebody alive. All right, here's the pipe bomb. Are we kidding? Are we kidding?
That was a shocking decision. I was really actually kind of shocked that it went to that kind of level.
And she made sure she died there. We'll talk about it later. I don't want to jump ahead with that. Let's talk more about Ishido. But he obviously doesn't understand what's going on half the time. He's just kind of a dumb guy.
So when she challenges him in the formal audience, and the actor does a really good job. He's actually upset and offended the fact that she's talking back to him that way. Right. He's blind to what she's doing. He's completely blind to the plan.
Yep. And Anna Sawai's clarity in tone when she's just. I don't think we've heard Mariko raise her voice this entire series. She saved it all for here. I am the daughter of Akechi Jinsai. My family have been samurai for 1,000 years. Oh my God. It was, I got chills. Awesome. I got chills. It was so good.
Yeah. It was incredible. And in front of everybody and challenging his authority. And so he either overreacts or underreacts. There's no safe. The pathway out of that is so difficult.
Yep.
And he's not, like you were saying, he's not clever enough to go against toe-to-toe with Toranaga.
Nope. or Mariko even. He couldn't go one-on-one with Mariko. He just can't do it. He is in such an impossible situation. I think Toranaga might have been able to figure out a way out of it, but he's not smart enough to do it. And he miscalculates it every single step, right? He's like,
right.
I mean, he would have just let her go through with the seppuku if Ochiba hadn't convinced him that she really would do it, because he didn't believe it. He was like, she's not going to go through with that. It's like, she absolutely will. Don't underestimate her. He missteps it every single way. It's her revenge against fate, right? That's what it was.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it was. So good. Yeah. So good.
And the last misstep is the shinobi.
The point has been continually raised, which is he is not somebody who was born into this life. And now I don't want to make a moral judgment in the sense of, oh, the nobles are better than somebody else. But if you're born into that scenario and that situation, it's like being fluent in a language.
Yeah, he didn't learn to play the Game of Thrones.
No, he learned to climb the ladder, but once he got up there, it's a different game.
Right.
It's not just about, so he was focused, and he did a good job of climbing the ladder. But now that he's up there, he doesn't have the tools necessary to play the Game of Thrones from that. What am I thinking of? The court, right? All the nobles and ladies, all the power centers, everybody's swirling who's in allegiance with who.
Yep.
That's very different than just fighting your way to being king.
Oh, and you just made me realize something. When she goes, "I am not a peasant for you to step on." The subtext is, "I'm not a peasant like you."
Like you.
Yeah.
Good point.
Oh, it's so good.
I missed that too. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. So good. And then she, of course, flips around he goes, "Where are your manners?" And then later she's like, "When you get the manners to let me finish my sentence." Mic drop. Mic drop.
Absolutely. So I know we're not supposed to always compare this with Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, et cetera, but I'm really glad that these two shows are kind of back to back in this way, because here we have Lady Ochiba and Mariko, and then now we're going to have remind me their names, because it's my head's full.
You got Rhaenyra. Oh my god,
Rhaenyra.
We're going to get so many.
Don't add him.
Rhaenys and
right,
Renegagon, and all the other Rhaenys.
Anyway, we have these two sister non-sisters who are in opposition, and that's what we have a little bit in this show. So I'm really excited to do some comps between the two seasons.
Yeah, you got the Dragon Lady and the Foot Queen, right? That's their names.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just joking. I'm just joking about Laris and his stupid,
right,
icky.
But it's a really it's like an embarrassment of riches in terms of television to have these two shows so close. And I'm glad that they're not right on top of each other, but we've got a little breather before we get House of the Dragon. So,
and I've been sounding the alarm that we're doing a rewatch of season 1 ahead of it. I've been putting that in our show notes as we go into our other podcast this week. Since like I said, I've been recording a lot this week, and I'm trying to tell everybody what we're doing.
You're on the mic. You're back. I need to start getting the season 1 shoehorned into my life schedule.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a big deal.
It's almost
all right. Who do you want to talk about next?
I want to talk about taking a break.
Okay. Let's do that.
Hey listeners, if you've been listening to our show, chances are you've heard the wonderful contributions of our favorite Tolkien scholar, Marilyn R. Pukila. Marilyn just launched her own podcast on our network called Rings and Rituals.
Join me and Dr. Sarah Brown on our journey through the Lord of the Rings of Power, through the lens of ritual. Episodes drop every other Wednesday on the Rings and Rituals feed, linked in the show notes. See you there.
And we're back. So let's talk about the other weakling regents, because we've got plenty of them to go around. Kiyama and Ono. We are powerless, Ono says.
Right.
Wow.
They are, and they're as hostage as anybody else.
Yeah. And they know that. And it's really interesting. They're just totally defeated.
Mm-hmm.
They are not willing to do anything. I mean, maybe you could say in the background, Kiyama might have fought for, Mariko to get permits, but I don't see it. I mean, he can't even tell her that he's not coming to her seppuku.
And with Ono, he's never even been a factor in things other than just being one of the 5 regents.
Right.
And I forget who's the other lord that was killed by the bandits. Wink, wink.
Oh, he doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, Sugiyama.
Yep, Sugiyama.
And so it was surprising to see Kiyama take on such a prominent role, especially when he talks to Blackthorn.
Yeah.
Very proper Portuguese.
He speaks
English.
Portuguese now. That's cool. Just enough to be mocked by Blackthorn, of course.
Right. But it's kind of helpful, to make some side deals, to take a little bit of cream off the top of the black ship,
Right.
Because what does he say? I don't care about the church stuff. I care about trade.
Yeah, it's funny. And I think we're even told that in an early episode, right? Is that he converted to Christianity solely to make money. Like, he's not really interested.
Oh, I forgot about that fact.
Ono is the one who converted for religious reasons.
For soul reasons, yeah.
Right. Because of the leprosy.
Right. Again, looking for some sort of salvation, some sort of way to deal with the problems of life, that the problems that life presents.
Yeah. And then Kiyama and Mariko, this whole idea of the intersection between Christian and Japanese customs.
That was so good, wasn't it?
Lord Kiyama, and you could tell he's like, me? Don't point at me. I don't want any part of this. And she goes, I formally ask you. When she said formally, I was like, oh yeah. I formally ask you to be my second, as you are another Christian.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that is such a good play there.
And I'm curious, it's interesting because it's a form of assisted suicide, because it's not murder. You're doing it with consent. But she can't take her own life. But what about his soul? Do we need to get a sin eater in over here? Do we need to get old Munch? What's his name? Old Munch from Fargo over here.
Well, we know Blackthorn thinks it's a sin because he's like, I'll go to hell for you. Grumble.
Right. Grumble. Yeah, it was interesting. I thought it was a really great twist, and that he ghosted her, and he can't show up because then that would be doing her some kind of favor, and that would be destabilizing for Ishido. So I get why he didn't show up, and it obviously then it gave us a very dramatic scene with Blackthorn stepping in.
Well, I wonder, do you think he actually had concerns about his mortal soul, or do you think he just thinks it's all horseshit?
No, I think he thinks it's all horseshit, but I don't think he went because that it would have been seen as
him committing a mortal sin,
helping.
Yeah.
Well, and it would have been helping, right? And it would have been helping. It would have, because if she did it and it was all it all went through, then Ishido's going to look bad,
right?
And that's why he comes in at the end and stops it. How did he know when to come in at the right spot?
Because this is TV and we needed a dramatic moment. Let's just overlook that. That's fine.
All right. Don't overcomplicate it. Yeah. It's TV.
All right, Yabashige, our favorite
my man.
trader.
Our
favorite trader. Let's hear Alicia's thoughts.
Yabushige the rat. He was everywhere in the shadows whenever you turn to look this episode. He really gave up quite quickly on plan A to, say that to give the Anjin to Ishido. And I knew it must be a ruse, but I thought it was a ruse. But actually, it seems like he really just is constantly squirming. He's like, okay, well, that didn't work. Next up, I'll just offer him my services. But he looked like he did not like the position he had put himself in the end. It was interesting. I have trouble parsing how he feels about Mariko because he was very much refusing to let her translate, for instance. And maybe, I guess that's just because he didn't want Blackthorn to know that he was being offered up. By the way, shouldn't Blackthorn's Japanese be a little bit better by now? I know in the books it is, but perhaps this is more realistic, that he just really is barely learning anything. I had to wonder this entire episode, how much did he really understand Blackthorn? I think not much, and I think that's exactly what Yabushige wanted.
Right. And Blackthorn's going to be without his translator now, so...
Yeah, he's
going to have to hold his own.
It's interesting because the language thing, when he goes before Lady Ochiba, he says that little phrase, and she's like, a well-prepared phrase, you know.
You did such a good job. I'm gonna take a little recording of you. I'm gonna put it up on the fridge, and yeah.
But I'd be curious to know from some of our listeners who live in Japan, who are not Japanese, how hard it was to learn Japanese. I don't
looking at Davy Mack.
Davy Mack, or even Abby, who could say what the experience was like, because I think Abby probably, well, it'd be interesting because she speaks Hungarian. Hungarian's a very complex language. And so it'd be curious to know, like, what's a harder language to learn, Hungarian or Japanese?
Well, I wonder if it's also based on the language that you already know, because Blackthorn, sure, he learned Portuguese and Latin in the book, at least, and he knows Dutch, but all of those are a little related, at least. Japanese is fully removed from that language canon.
It's true.
And I think
you don't have
part
any
of it.
text.
Yeah, and that's something that he even says in the book to himself. He's like, I can't relate any of these sounds to the ones that I already know, and it's really hard for that. So maybe that's part of it.
And you don't have letters or an alphabet to sound out in that same way,
right?
Like, you know, to combine
you have
reading
kanji.
and writing.
You have these figures that are syllables instead of letters, and that's confusing. And sometimes you need to use a different looking letter. I tried to learn some Japanese when I was getting into anime. Don't judge me. And it's hard. It's just really hard. Like the written language especially is like, there's two versions of the writing, and you have to use them in different contexts. And actually there's really three versions. Anyway, it's a lot. And I don't blame Blackthorn for being a little confused.
Right. Yeah. And unless he's actually studying, and they didn't show us him studying.
We got no montage.
Books, right. And exactly. No language learning montage.
Rocky music with him with a scroll.
That would have been awesome. Because I think in the books, it's certainly in the 80s miniseries, the whole village is tasked with teaching him the language, and they just removed that completely.
Yeah. Well, in the book, it's kind of weird because they're like, oh, well, this village will die if you don't learn Japanese. But then they kind of never follow up on any of it. It's really weird.
Right.
But I don't know. I think it's fine to do it the way it's in the TV show. I think it's a little bit more realistic in the 2024 series.
Agreed. So Yabushige, he's really boxed himself in. He thought he was walking in with a big, shiny, cool thing. And Ishido's just like, I don't want your barbarian. I don't want your cannons.
Yeah.
Like, you know, go away, silly man.
He's really crestfallen.
Yeah, exactly. Your trained little parrot there, your little pet. And I thought it was really funny that the whole time that Yabushige and Blackthorn were talking, that Yabushige is like, oh no, we're going to go turn ourselves over and we're going to ally with him again. And then I don't think Blackthorn understood that.
He didn't understand that he was the meat.
Yeah. That's right. Nor that they were going to turn traitor, right? Like, you know, because he thinks he's going to sail against the black ship. Ishido's not going to let him sail against the black ship. He doesn't know that he's going to be, you know, the way that it's going to go down. I think.
Blackthorn's a little naive here. But I think he's kind of like, I think where he's at is, I can't go back home. I can't really fit in here.
I got to figure something out.
I'm just going to go with the flow now. I mean, he's so much quieter this episode than he has been in previous episodes, right? He's learned to keep his mouth shut. Part of that is Mariko asks him to, right? Is just like, well, Yabashige first tells him to be quiet, and then Mariko says, "Don't meddle. Can you do that for me?"
Yeah.
Which is
that was a great line.
Yeah, that was so really good. Like, I would pause before acting after that. And I really liked, and they kind of brought this up on the official podcast, which I finally listened to this week a little bit. And they brought this up that they wanted to make sure that this wasn't Blackthorn, the white guy, busting in and saving Mariko and sweeping her off her feet and fixing everything.
Mm-hmm.
This was Mariko's story, where she was saving a lot of people and sacrificing herself for a cause she believed to be bigger.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't help me.
Right.
Because that's not, like, you don't have the right to
It's not help. Yeah. It's not actually help.
Right.
That's not actually, what you're offering is not actually helpful in this situation.
Right.
Just like kind of Buntaro in a way.
Yeah.
Like, nice tea ceremony, but I don't love you.
Right.
Even though I was surprised, because I think she has, I didn't think she had feelings for Blackthorn anymore, but I know Alicia a couple of episodes ago, she's like, nah, it's still there.
No, yeah, it was
sure
still
enough,
there. It was, my husband's back. I shouldn't be cheating on him. I'm not an adulterer, so I'm just gonna, just gonna pretend that never happened. I
thought she was done with him last episode. Like, you broke, you're not Hatamoto anymore. This is all messy.
No,
like,
I don't think her attraction was to do with his Hatamoto status. I thought
no, his Hatimoto status,
Hatimoto.
not his Hatamoto.
All right. But no, I think she was charmed by his personality, and in the book she's like way more like, oh, hello, John Blackthorn.
Right.
But I'm glad that they balanced that out a lot more in the show. And
hugely.
Also, even if they had never been together before this night, I think they Trump bonded a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Agreed. Yes, absolutely agreed. And I think that's where when the situation starts to pressurize, that's when they do find that they still have affection for each other. And I thought that was interesting, even though we're supposed to be talking about Yabashige in this segment right now.
Right. I know we're going to just talk about Mariko this whole episode.
We're just going to talk about whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's Mariko's episode. Let's go back to Yabashige really quick. What is the deal? Like, he turned this way and it wasn't working out. He turned that way, it wasn't working out. He turns this way and then a bunch of shinobi come rolling in, and he's like, damn.
Yeah.
What does he really want? Is he just trying to stay alive?
Oh yeah. He's just scraping the bottom of the barrel for plans at this point, because he knows if he doesn't, like, right now he's just in Ishido's power. He doesn't think that they're actually going to be allowed to leave. And in fact, at the point he got the orders, this was before Mariko got the permits, right?
Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember now.
The scene came before, at least.
Okay. Yeah.
So
then that would make sense, because this show is not doing a lot of.
And it was daylight out. So yeah. It was daylight out, and she was committing seppuku at sunset.
Right.
I think he's basically like, well, we're not going to be allowed to leave, so I better make nice with my new captor. And he's
always wanted to be with Ishido. He's constantly trying to go that direction.
I don't think that's true. I mean, in the book, it's explicit that he's like, I got these two sides. I don't know who's gonna win. Right now, the balance is tipping in Ishido's favor, but I think it could go Toranaga. So right now, I'm gonna play both sides.
Interesting. So he's just trying to come out on the winning side. He's just trying to balance right into the last moment and then pick the winning side.
It's there's a quote in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, a silly one. He's like, I play both sides. That way I always come out on top. And that's Yabashige right there.
Right. I think that's it. So that's pretty straightforward motivation.
Yeah.
He's pretty simple in that regard.
Yeah. But he switches sides twice in one episode, which I think is really funny. Like, he's pledging to Ishido.
Yeah.
And then later he's like, so what's Toranaga's plan? Because we got to do it. And then later he's back to Ishido.
Which when the assassins started coming in, I was like, oh, this is Crimson Sky. This is Toranaga's.
Yeah, me too. I was like, oh, okay, good. We're getting the battle suit. Oh no. Yeah, in slow motion.
Because I forgot that the little scene of him being bribed by Ishido's guys was so short, and I just kind of it got washed with all the other things that were going on.
And with really
the drama
great
of Mariko's.
Yeah, and a really great moment where he reaches back to get the paper for the message, and and the guy leans in and he starts whispering to him.
Right.
Because he's like, I'm going to give you a message that is not going to be in writing. There will be no
right. Exactly. This is not written down.
Yeah.
There's no email.
Right.
Don't email about these things.
Hillary Clinton will not be subpoenaed about this. No, but yeah, I mean, this is very under the radar. And that's and I also love Yabushige's after he says one thing you have to do for him. It's like, I think Yabushige, even in that moment, knows that like this probably is not going to end well for him anyway. Like, I guarantee you, Ishido's orders are kill Yabushige in the process too. Just get him out of here.
That's interesting that he's still alive after all of this, and would he have come out if Ishido had been successful in a cleaner way, right? Not in this messy way that we got now.
Like capturing.
Yeah, what would have happened to?
Yeah,
exactly. What would have happened to Yabushige in this?
Oh, I think he's dead.
What would have his been?
Well, because you have somebody who's going to turn on a dime like that. How would you ever? It's like people who start dating someone who has a partner, so that like they're dating the cheater, and they expect to have a really faithful relationship.
Right?
Now.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, you don't think they're going to do the same thing with you
again? Yeah.
Exactly. You can't trust a two-timer. You just can't do it. No. A double agent. Yeah. And I do love that he gets trapped in his own consequences later.
Consequence.
You do it. You're on TikTok now, huh?
No. That was from before TikTok. I was on TikTok for a little while, and that was one that was.
Look, I found the consequence. Yeah, there's a lot of good TikToks about that.
Yeah.
All right. So John Blackthorne. Actually, we have another voicemail from Alicia to play.
Oh, excellent.
John, not a pirate Blackthorne, sure was bringing his A-level romance this episode. Even though I laughed when he went storming off from the meeting with Ochiba like a clumsy bear, and he kind of looks constipated when he tries to bow formally. But yeah, by volunteering to kill Mariko, he showed that he finally understood her. And that after, that romantic line of, would you consider living for me? But she walks away from that thinking, well, I love you, but you don't understand me. And then he showed her that he did understand her, which is why, he kind of earned that last night together. And I'm very glad for both of them that they had that before she went out. I'm glad he didn't have to go through with being her second, though, because as we've established previously, he doesn't seem to be the greatest swordsman. And also, why didn't Mariko put up her hair? Like, I just kept thinking, you don't want this extra thing to cut through. But yeah, Blackthorne did get the chance to protect the honor of women on a grander scale when he managed to be in the right place at the right time when the shinobi showed up in the women's quarter. So yeah, good for him, but I have a feeling that he is going to be a deeply unhappy man next week. I'm so curious where this is all going to end for him.
Yeah, it was an interesting Blackthorne episode in that he, like you were saying, he's very quiet. He's much more, his manners are much better. He's not disgracing himself. He's not lashing out or acting out. And in fact, he offers something that's actually very genuine, which is to second her. That is a really genuine offer. He, knowing that's the last memory he would have of her, that kind of carrying that kind of trauma and darkness around with you.
Yeah.
But he's willing to do it so that she doesn't die in disgrace. That's really something. And I don't think Mariko's actually had a lot of people offering that for her, right? Like doing something really nice for her, just for her. Like, hey, this is for you, not for me.
Right. Something completely unselfish, right? Selfless.
Yeah.
Selfless is the word that I'm trying to find.
That's
here.
the word. But you and me both.
Yeah. It's, I never thought that when we started this podcast, I'd describe cutting someone's head off as a selfless act. But here we are. 2 years in.
This is what this kind of TV does to you.
I know. Yeah, it's tough. And Blackthorne, This almost feels like a good substitute for the book where he's going to commit seppuku himself. Because this is him really saying, all right, this might not be my culture, but I get it. And I get what she's doing here. And not just that, I think part of it is he understands the fear of going to hell because he was raised in that, even if he doesn't believe it. I don't think he's a real believer, but and he doesn't want Mariko to think she's going to hell on the way out. And even if none of it's real, he doesn't want her to feel like she has failed God, that she's failed
in
herself,
that last moment.
Damned.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where it's a selfless act on his part.
Right.
He's going to carry the weight of that.
Of killing a
trauma.
woman he loves.
Exactly. In a not great way. He's not a great swordsman. Right. So, it's high stakes.
We're gonna have
but
9 hacks just like
I don't want to go there.
Toranaga.
Yeah, baby Toranaga. But I think it's a really good point that you make, which is she, even in that moment, regardless of what you or I or any of us believe about the afterlife and about our souls and that kind of stuff, the fact that in that moment he doesn't want her to die with that fear, but he wants her to be able to pass with peace of mind. That she was second, and that's a really good point. That's a really interesting angle. I had thought about it, and then that's where I was saying it's he's doing something for her, not for himself.
I agree with that.
And I think it's interesting because we've talked about John Blackthorne. At least I had the little theory that, he was kind of a user, right? He's, I'm going to make my fate every moment. I'm going to use the sailors. I'm going to use my orders, and I'm going to push us beyond where we should have been. And I'm going to just, take every chance I get to survive while I'm in the Japans. He really is a different person now, in the sense of he's bowing properly. He's showing proper respect to people, like on the deck of the ship. He, when Yabashige comes up and he turns around, he's like, oh, and he bows to him nicely. Right. He really has gone through a sea change. He's really changed he's not being selfish all the time about what he wants for himself.
Yeah.
And I think this is the pinnacle of that, of being her second.
I agree.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, how badly is he going to be injured after this explosion?
Right. And how badly is he going to be emotionally wounded even if he makes it out pretty unscathed?
I think he's going to be pissed.
Yeah, but I think he's also going to be devastated and depressed. And what are his motivations from here? I'm sure he's going to want revenge on Ishido.
Yeah.
But after that, there's an after that,
So there's this question that's going around about, like, what are we going to get in episode 10? How are they going to bring this together? And are we going to have an action heavy episode or not? I think a lot of people would like a good heavy action scene, having Toranaga's forces show up and having a great big old bloody battle. I don't know how far they're going to go with it. But the fact that we've got now Buntaro is going to be pissed as well. He's pissed for other reasons as well as, still his wife. And so there's a lot of dangerous bees buzzing around Ishido right now. Like, how is that all going to go down? I have no idea what they're going to do in 10. There's no way for me to predict the episode.
I don't think Ishido makes it out alive.
I would hope not.
But and Yabashige is on thin ice too. As far the only thing saving him is people's lack of knowledge of his treachery.
Ooh, man, this would be a great death pool.
Yeah. Well, too bad. Too late.
Yeah, kind of too late to
also,
organize that. That would have been really good.
It's a little hard to do because there's a book, right? Like there's real history too.
Yeah,
and so
that's true.
I knew who's gonna overall win. Just by knowing a little bit about Japanese history.
Right.
But I don't know how it's going to happen. And honestly, I think the most action-packed scene in this whole show so far has been the scene where Mariko challenges Ishido. I don't think
in the audience room.
I don't think you can or should limit action to battles, to physical violence.
Right. Right. Agreed.
It's so much more interesting so many times to just watch these battles of words.
I know you haven't played a lot of role-playing games like that. You're more of a video game and Magic player, but you've played a little bit of role-playing.
A little bit.
Little Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's something that you find with a really good dungeon master or whatever role-playing game that you're playing is when the diplomacy stuff and the negotiation stuff and the even all the stuff that the non-sword play stuff has the same level of excitement as it is rolling the dice against a dozen skeletons or, whatever monsters you're facing. That's really good. And that's a really good point is that scene, the stakes in that scene were in some ways more exciting than it was the fight in the courtyard.
Yeah.
I think the fight in the courtyard, it's like, okay, yeah, we know the outcome, right? That's a pretty predictable outcome. There's no predicting what's going to happen in that audience scene between Mariko and Ishido. That's a good point. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
But we still got to talk about the forecourt, the courtyard fight scene.
We'll get there. We got a couple more sections. I mean, Blackthorn, and I did enjoy, as far as funny things, I did enjoy him learning to bow. That was funny.
Yeah. Right.
It reminded me of, I know you're not a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan, but there's a whole episode where
you're big on Curb today.
I am big on Curb today. I don't think I quoted Curb yet today. I think I just did.
Oh, what were you quoting before?
Always Sunny.
Yeah, what was the one before when we were off the mic?
I don't remember.
You quoted something else.
But it doesn't matter. But so there's a whole episode of Curb where Larry orders from a Japanese restaurant and it leaks through the bag. And he goes in and he's like, that was terrible. What can you do for me? And the guy just bows to him and he's like, oh, that's great. So then, I'm not done yet. He finds a random Asian man walking through the park. And he's like, he tells him about it. He's like, yeah, I got this great bow. And he bows like that. And the guy's like, he bowed like that? He's like, yeah. He's like, that's a shit bow. So Larry goes back to the original Japanese restaurant and goes, you gave me a shit bow. And I just want to know Larry David's reaction to John Blackthorn's bow.
Very funny. Very funny.
All right, so let's go on to the main attraction, Mariko-sama. Or Dono, depending on who you are.
Okay. Well, we've talked a lot about it already. What else do we need to go through?
Let's find out what Alicia has to say first. How about that?
Oh, well, that's a very good point.
Oh, Mariko, my heart. Huh? This last minute reprieve, only for her to die after all. But man, did she really get to show everything that she's capable of this episode. First of all, this is the most ruthless that we've ever seen Mariko, and just sweeping her kimono around like a mic drop. And of course, we're reminded of her grace in poetry.
Yeah, that was dope.
Now, it's interesting, this poetry line, a leafless branch, and Yabushige even comments on it later, which, of course, we discussed before, that Ochiba no Kata means something like the woman of the room with the fallen leaves. So, yeah, I think there's probably more layers that we could dig into there. Now, Mariko, we also see what an actress she is, like not just Anna Sawai, but the character herself. It was so interesting to see how she presented Toranaga's story about why she has to get his women out of there, and just her face remains a mask, but then she puts this quavering emotion into her voice, like, he had to mourn the death of his son. And I suppose probably there is some real sadness for her, although it's not like, it's not like she was close to him herself. I think this is just very much her performing. And we also got to see how she became a Christian. And once you see that, you see how the priest, kind of saved her from herself, from her psyche, from her depression in her darkest moments. You can understand her commitment to Christianity. And so it's also interesting to see how they show what, the conflict between being Catholic and being Japanese at this time. For instance, the sin of suicide versus the obligation to kill yourself if in certain situations, and the act of confession to the priest versus the eightfold fence that she talked about before. Yeah, it's also at the same time, though, I couldn't help but feel like the father was a little bit manipulative in terms of, taking advantage of her by converting her to something she didn't completely understand in her darkest moment. But maybe that's just my thoughts about religion in general. We got her tour of goodbyes, including that one, and also including her son, that little shit. He got older, but it seems like he got less mature, definitely more manipulated by the people around him, which is a danger of these, hostage exchanges situations. But
Totally.
yeah, Anna Sawai went out on quite the high. That gate scene was one of the most incredible scenes I've ever witnessed on television. I just loved all of the layers of the story that they told, the tension building, but also little things like they showed she was fighting her all, but she did not have the same precision and form with the naginata that she had in her youth. And I just appreciate the show's attention to detail like that. Mariko will be missed certainly by Blackthorn, certainly by Toranaga, but also definitely most of all by viewers.
Yeah, I mean, if she doesn't get an Emmy, what's even the point of them? I wouldn't trust the Emmys ever again.
Right.
I mean, incredible performance all around. This whole shtick she's doing the whole season. I'm trying to figure out how I want to phrase this, but the whole very calm, cool, collected. Doesn't move her torso much when she walks, never raises her voice, is always doing this slight smile thing, this polite smile. It breaks at different parts of this episode. And you see that that's not Anna Sawai not acting. That's her acting in a particular form. And then later, when she needs to break out the tears, when she needs to break out the frustration, the tears she's trying to hold back. I don't know how somebody acts like they're holding back tears so well.
Because it's just to do acting and make tears come out.
Right.
But then you're making tears come out, but then holding them back.
Right. You're
right?
dialing back the faucet
weird.
A little bit.
Right. While you're trying to open it at the same time.
Right.
It's weird. The
so
scene
crazy.
when her son says, well, I'm not going to be your son anymore. There's a little quiver and a tear, like her face starts to break a little bit.
Yeah.
Again,
she looks
subtle.
hurt. She just looks hurt. And her son, Sansa Stark,
Genuine.
really is more interested in a betrothal with the enemy than he is his own
Don't
mother.
talk bad about Sansa with
no,
with
but I'm
Alicia
saying
listening in.
Sansa in season 1 and 2.
Season 1, we all agree.
Really,
yes,
season
we all
1.
agree.
Yeah, season 1, we're all frustrated because she's a kid, just like this guy's a kid.
You're right.
Who is hanging around with a rival house a lot and is like, oh, I want the fairy tale. And it's a very similar situation. No, I love Sansa as a character later on. And I think she has a tremendous development, and that's what makes her a really great character in fiction. But we just aren't going to get that with this character because the series ends in 45 minutes.
He does do something really interesting, though, which is he brings up the whole question of duty. And I love this. And we talked about this at very beginning of the season. This idea that you're on these rails of duty, right? My lord commands me to leave this castle. Everybody knows I need to obey my liege lord. If I say, okay, I agree with you, I can't leave, then I'm disobeying my lord.
Right.
So what do? I'm in a bind here. And so a lot of this storytelling from this period, I guess, deals with a lot of these things, like your allegiance and your loyalty and your duty to your lord and to all these different situations. Toranaga has the freedom to be, his allegiance is to Japan overall, as opposed to, to his clan, but then also he's always trying to think about Japan. Mariko's got to have allegiance to her liege lord. But then her son says, what about your duty to God? And I was like, whoa. I was like, what is your duty to God in this particular point? And especially when we know that the Catholic Church is using the sort of rapacious capitalism as a means to an end, right? They're trying to collect souls while the crown is collecting gold and silver. So what is Mariko as a believer, as a true believer in a Christian faith? What is her duty to God in this moment? Who comes first, God or Toranaga? Clearly Toranaga.
Right.
That's the choice that she makes.
I want to talk about that. So interesting, because when the moment comes when she has to decide whether to commit a mortal sin or to
do her duty to her liege lord,
she chooses to do her duty, and she chooses and she rips off, she breaks off, not even takes off, but breaks off.
Yeah, that's right.
Cross.
That's right.
Very deliberately.
Right.
It's really incredible. It's her body language is just so great at conveying everything. Just the way her desperation builds, but she's still willing to do her duty, and she's just one slip of the dagger away from dying.
And great construction, right? Because the cold open with the backstory there of how her and Alvido met perfectly sets up, right? It's just what we need. She's running away. They bring her back. She meets Alvido. He gives her the cross. So that thing is sitting there. We forget all about it because of all the other drama that's going on. And then boom, they hit us with that when she rips it off.
Yeah.
That is just such good storytelling. That is, and you could go, okay, it's Chekhov's cross right at the beginning here. When is it going to come? The third act. There it was.
Yeah.
But it was so effective as a device that I just have to applaud the writers for that. Very, very clever.
And they set up the question early on, right? You have your duty, your loyalty to me and your loyalty to God. Do they conflict? She says, well, I have multiple hearts. It's fine. He's like, well, what if they do conflict, though? And she never really answers.
Yeah, that's right. And here it is.
Right.
And she makes her choice.
Right.
She makes her ultimate choice. And then, well, she's still a married woman, and yet she chooses to sleep with Blackthorn again. So interesting. Yeah, 3 hearts, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
3 hearts indeed. She probably could have gotten away at the end. Can we agree on that? Like, she probably could have gotten out of the blast zone at least.
Yeah. You mean like she could have stepped away from the doors? Yeah, totally. They would have been captured, I think, at that point, because that explosion would have knocked the disoriented them and knocked them down, and those guys would have rushed in. So they were in a pretty dangerous position there.
Yep.
So,
also, I wanted to bring up the historicity. This is really interesting. Hosokawa Gracia, which is the real life Mariko, was famous for refusing to commit seppuku because of her Christian faith.
Oh, interesting.
So this Mariko makes the opposite choice.
Good. Very cool. I like that.
She does eventually die, there's a similar like political issue here. But so that's where the truth comes from. But I think that this works so much better as a narrative device here. Right. I mean, you're not writing history as a narrative device. You know what I mean?
Yep. I do know what you mean. Yeah, just an incredible performance and what an incredible arc of a character. I don't know when I'm going to be able to rewatch the season, but I'm definitely excited to rewatch the season, because now, knowing what we know at the end of episode 9, to go back to the beginning and to watch what Anna Sawai does with this character and how she builds her over the season. I'm really excited to see what's going on there. I want to look at the clockworks a little bit more.
Yeah. I want to get my wife back into it, because she's fallen off it a little bit. I'm like, you gotta keep going for Mariko. You gotta keep going. Let's talk about the courtyard fight a little bit.
Yes, we do. I think it's short because I think it's, compared to the audience scene with Ishido, I think you made a good point there. But the courtyard fight was fun. I kind of broke it down a little bit and looked at it. So they start out with Ishido has 15 men and Toranaga has 12. And they take out one of the guys in the armor right away, right? So they're down 1. And then they take out another guy in the armor. So they're down, they the archers take out the right guys, right, without just sending arrows down on everybody. And so I think, but if we look at that 15-12, and Toranaga's forces end up with one man standing, well, what Ishido, is able. The last man of Ishido is able to kill the last man of Toranaga, but he lives. That's a pretty strong fight. That I would say that even though they lost, Toranaga's forces were stronger.
Yeah.
If they didn't have the archers, up there, I think Toranaga's people would have won. I don't know if they would have gotten through the second gate, but
yeah. But they were never supposed to win, right? Like they knew going into that, Mariko's like, yeah, I'm sacrificing everybody that's with me right now.
Which is wild because those two dudes are like, are we ready? Hell yeah, we're ready. Are we going to die? Hell yeah, we're going to die. But
they
we're
knew
going to die with honor, and we're going to. Yeah, absolutely. And they were like, and then when the last dude bows to her, oh my God, that was so intense.
Yep,
it was an honor to serve you. Bow, stab.
Yeah,
like that was rough. And those dudes in the armor were badass. That one guy takes out the two guys in 3 sword strokes.
Mm-hmm.
Right, he gets him on the quick draw, 1, 2, 3, and he does the little flick to get the blood off the blade. It was so badass.
Awesome. Yep.
And then, so this is where I wanted to get into the armor and the longbow stuff, is because the bowmen, the archers get him in a vulnerable shoulder spot. Exactly. They nail that shot perfectly. If they'd been half an inch off either direction, it would have, not been maybe as effective because the armor would have deflected it or stopped it from going in as far.
I mean, I'm sure Ishido sent his best archers to make sure they didn't get out, because it's pretty embarrassing to be on your home turf and have people escape anyway.
It's true. So then when Mariko is walking up to face the dudes and they're shooting arrows at her feet, we know she's good at withstanding arrows being shot at her. Yeah. Because remember way back when Buntaro shot an arrow across her face?
Yep. I also got the same vibe when she's standing in the middle of the carnage in general before everybody dies. And she's just standing in the middle, the calm in the middle of the chaos, the eye of the storm.
Totally. I took a couple of photos and I posted them in the Discord channel. There's another scene in this where she sticks out her hand and the Nagakata spear gets put into her hand, and there's this beautiful framing of her hand, her kimono. A couple of folks in the Discord were mentioning this too. The beautiful material of her kimono, the grays of the scene, just the balance and the composition of all the shots was incredible. And like I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, the way that they use the camera to push in. There's a scene when they're getting ready to leave, and we get a pair of shoji mat doors or whatever. I'm not sure the particular technology name of that because they're exterior doors. They're not the interior, so they're different. Anyway, they open up. The camera's right there. The balance of people is perfectly balanced. So there's Mariko and there's the 2 ladies behind. I forget, what is it? Kiri no Kata and Shizu
the
no
other
Kata.
No Kata, yeah.
They're standing behind her, and then there's 2 lady servants standing behind them. So they're in this perfect little diamond formation. The camera, or the doors open. The camera then pushes in on them perfectly as her face looks up. The craftsmanship and the camera work is incredible in this scene. Then when she finally falls down after fighting all the dudes, look where she falls into. She falls into the little semicircle of arrows that were shot at her. So she's not only defeated, but she's trapped all around.
Right.
It's a really great, subtle visual storytelling that was so just exquisite.
But you have to think that the character Mariko knew that too, right? Because this whole thing is a play. I want to be surrounded by the arrows so you can see how many they shot at me. Just this little woman, this daughter of a disgraced samurai, and you have to shoot all these at me. You're that afraid of me leaving just to deliver a baby, a newborn boy, to his father?
Right, and that's the theater of it, right?
Yeah.
That's the theater. But she's fighting as hard as she can.
Sure.
She's trying to fight those guys.
It's got to be authentic.
Everything she has until she's exhausted.
And she wasn't risking a lot here. They weren't going to try to hit her.
No.
They were just going to block the blows.
Right. But oh man, and that to swing that spear, that's heavy.
Yep.
And then she's hitting other spears, and that shock is vibrating back down your hands. I mean, she really was going all out. That was exhausting.
It is.
So when she does finally collapse, she's completely spent.
Yeah.
So and it wasn't an act, like that was real, but it was real in the sense of theater, right? The whole thing's theater, but she's really trying to do what she's really trying to do.
She's went to the Gene Cousineau School of Acting.
Exactly.
You know, she's got to keep it real.
The truth of the moment.
Yep.
The truth in the moment.
Yep.
All right.
Shall we do a favorite moment?
Sure. You want to start off with one?
Sure. I really liked Mariko's speech to Ishido. I think we talked about it to death, but I mean, that's the scene of the show to me, not just the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't think of it in that way, in that terms, because I was really focused on the courtyard fight, but I think you've got me, you won me over to your cause.
I'm all about the verbal battles. I'm all about this situation that all of a sudden turned Ishido into the oppressor and Toranaga into the liberator. Amazing.
Yeah. Brilliant. One of mine, well, it was multiples, but anytime that Yabushige and Blackthorn were talking, and they're like, just that sort of like, you understand, right?
Yeah, especially, I thought it was really funny, because like, at least Blackthorn knows some Japanese, but Yabushige knows literally no Portuguese and has no interest in knowing it. Do you understand? He's like, yeah, I understand. Hi.
It was brilliant. I love those two guys. Even though he's a turncoat bastard, he's our turncoat bastard.
Is he? I don't think
not ever really. I don't know. I love him.
Right,
you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
I get you. I mean, the seppuku scene, I don't think I felt as tense in a scene.
I thought they were going to do it
a long time.
I
Me
thought
too.
It was
I thought that was it.
Yeah.
But the way they manipulated our like endorphins to be so relieved and then re-devastated, they got to pay for my next therapy bill.
Exactly. Everybody submit your therapist bills to FX after the season's over.
Yep.
That's for sure. I think the whole Lady Ochiba scene where she's talking with Ishido and the council, and I love the line, "It's her vengeance on fate." I absolutely love that. But then I was like, oh, that's one of my favorite scenes. But then she gives that look to Saeki, and I was like, oh no, damn, that's even a more harsh look.
Yeah.
She just kind of like slowly looks up at him like, you dumb motherfucker.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, and he looks down. It was brilliant.
I mean, I had as my third just watching Lady Ochiba the whole time. Yeah. Because the way that she looks away when she's congratulated on her engagement, the way her face turns from like annoyed to knowing to angry to sad to, boy, is she expressive. And then when she's hiding under her cover while watching the courtyard
while
fight,
watching the thing,
it really puts into perspective how she feels. I think she feels like the villain. I think she thinks that she's the villain of the story a little bit.
Well, I think that's part of what Mariko's mission is to kind of shame her and to push her emotionally in a direction where she starts to come out of her shell. Because what does she say? What was the line? Something about it's her fear. Her enemy is her fear, right? And she hides, and so her part of her Peregrine Falcon mission is to push her out of her hiding position. So she's actually out there in the sun and having to see things and realize, the stuff that's going on.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
Which is interesting because my last favorite moment is when Mariko says to Blackthorn, "Oh, it's just a ruse, so just let her speak, stand there and be dumb because this conversation is really about her and I, not about you. So you're just here as a pretext."
Can I also say I appreciated that Mariko translated something after Blackthorn didn't even speak? She said, the Anjin thanks the heir for his honor of, and it's like, dude didn't open his mouth.
Brilliant. So good. But yeah, I love it whenever Mariko says to Blackthorn, just like, dude, do this, don't do this, whatever. I love it when she just speaks plainly to him. It's always my favorite.
Yeah.
So, or when Fuji did the same thing at one point. She just checked him, just said, dude, knock it off.
Yep.
Right? I'm the person in charge here. So, just go with it.
I miss Fuji. I hope she comes back on the final
I hope
episode.
we see her too. Yeah. I'm going to be very sad if we don't see her.
Yeah. In the book, there's a whole line where like Blackthorn is like, yeah, this kind of hides her ugliness. And I'm like, ooh, that's so mean. That's so mean. And I'm glad that they took away a lot of his misogyny in the show. Yeah.
I don't think we would have enjoyed the show if they had done that.
No. And, I think of, a lot of people defend some of the choices in Game of Thrones and say like, oh, well, it's historically accurate. It's like, this show has more of an excuse for that than Game of Thrones does, being in a fantasy world.
And they manage it.
Yeah, they managed to tell a really great story without making it like gross. You know what I mean?
Pseudo, right? Without like, pseudo, like this is historically accurate. Yeah, that's a really good point. So, all right. Feedback.
If you want to send feedback, of course, you can go to thelorehounds.com and use the contact form page, or you can leave us a voicemail, as some people often do. Or you can send an email to Shogun at thelorehounds.com, like Kyle M.
Kyle M. I believe this is Kyle M, who's a Lorehound subscriber. Because we've got a couple of Kyle M's in our listing, and so I believe this is the one Kyle M who is. It says Shogun episode 9 feedback. This episode was quite heavy emotionally. I'm going to have to watch a few more times to really organize my thoughts, but figured I'd send in a few stray observations. I think we're all a little bit like this, Kyle. I think it was a very impactful episode, so I feel like I need to watch this 2 or 3 more times to really catch all the nuances and deal with all my emotions about it. Anyway, he continues. Number 1, the Portuguese church people serve as a little Greek chorus for us as they try to figure out what Toranaga's plan could be.
Ooh,
has he given up?
I like that.
Why is Blackthorn there? It's a handy device and it feels natural too. It also reintroduces the Catholics and reminds us that they have also come to Osaka. So it isn't as jarring when Martin shows up to chant with Mariko.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm missing that. Martin? Wait. Martin Alvito?
Yep.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it's an interesting point. A little Greek chorus. I like that.
Yeah, I like the framing of them as that. And they're all over Osaka, or as Yabashige would say, I hate this fucking city.
For a lot of reasons. All right, continuing. Number 2, I love how the regions think Mariko's plan to commit seppuku is just plain old girly drama, but Ochiba knows better. It's a good point. She knows how serious and smart her friend is and the extent to which she has thought things through. Yeah, agreed. And it goes back to what Lady Ochiba said, I think back in episode 5, when she's just like, you're all just children. You're all like little playthings, you're not serious. You're not serious people, as somebody else said in another television show that we're supposed to be comparing this one to. That was what was that show? I can't remember what it is now. My brain's melting out of my ears. Not Severance. Succession.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, he says to his children, "You're not serious people."
Oh yeah, I love you, but you're not serious people.
Yeah, that's it. Number 3, poetry is used nicely in this episode. In most of the series, though, Mariko does present a written poem as her last statement as she prepares to commit seppuku, poetry seems to be a largely improvised and ephemeral medium. It serves as a metaphor for the beautiful but fleeting nature of life. I think that's what a lot of Japanese poetry incorporates. When I was doing some reading and understanding a little bit more about Japanese poetry, a lot of it is about these wry observations or these really subtle noticings of things that are very fluid and fleeting and ephemeral. I think you really make a good point on there with that.
And
there's
communal.
A lot more that's going. Yeah. And it's communal. It's not just a little thing that you do, but it's shared and
it's a thing that we do. It's a little thing that we do.
I like it. Yeah. And you would share poetry with each other and you would kick it around, and it was a fun thing to best each other with or a little bit. So
right.
We did not talk about the poetry in this, but I thought it was funny. Like the whole thing of like, that's an amazing poem, opening. Wait, that's a stupid, everybody's critiquing.
Yeah. Yabashige
Mariko's
hated
poetry.
the poem.
So brilliant. But no, who talks about dead sticks in the spring? That's ridiculous.
Right. Yabashige, known poetry critic.
Exactly. I think you could do a lot with the poetry in this episode. All right.
Yeah.
So thanks, Kyle M. Definitely write in for the episode 10 if you've got something, and certainly for the season finale. All right, we've got Ann W., who is our other email today. Says, hi, guys. Thanks for your coverage of Shogun. I've really been enjoying the series and the speculation about the end game of the show. To paraphrase another show from this year, I wonder if we're asking the right questions.
Ooh. I don't want to think about that show anymore. I've ridden that off of my top 10 list already.
I don't think it's going to last. If it is, it's going to be for me probably around it. We'll see how many shows we get, but it's going to be sort of 9, 10, maybe 11, 12, somewhere in there. So
yeah, I don't think it's
just depending on what the volume. There's a lot into it. We've seen the public personas of Toranaga, Ochiba, and Mariko, and what they say to their confidants. Toranaga is publicly surrendering while his friends know he is not. Ochiba is the demure mother of the heir publicly while proclaiming her hatred of Toranaga privately. And Mariko publicly keeps saying things she wants to die, but expresses spite towards her husband and a desire for revenge privately. The Three Hearts saying suggests that there's an underlying motive we have yet to see from them, which is presumably different from their first two hearts. Okay. Now we're cooking. I think Anne is onto something here. We'd have to go back through and see how many hearts have we seen presented from everybody. Okay. So continuing.
Yeah. Well,
but to me, the right question.
There, I want to pause there. Please. I want to talk about these motivations. Please. I think that Mariko has a light bulb moment when Toranaga says, your father let you stay alive so you can, be a tool still, basically.
Right.
And I think she realized that in her mind, at least, and I'm not saying this is the right thing, nor would I encourage anyone else to adopt this mentality, but in her mind, her father saved her from dying so she could die at the right time. Right?
It's kind of messed up, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But she could die as a weapon at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And here she is. She's the weapon that's probably going to break this power dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely, she is. This is the thing that's going to destabilize everything. All right, should I carry on with Ann's email?
Yep.
But to me, the right question is, who knows about the heir's paternity? Assuming the theory is correct that he's not the son of the old Taiko. At a minimum, this would include his biological father, but I get the impression from the last episode the dying old wife was also in on it. That's interesting. Are you in on the fact that the Taikos and the heir are not actually blood related?
I mean, it would make a lot of sense that, what was it, like 50 consorts couldn't get pregnant, and then this one does. And, that's not really how fertility works, right? Like it probably was him who was infertile. And yeah. And also that would give Toranaga a really good reason to seize control. This is not a legitimate heir. Why are we letting an illegitimate child, rule over us? A child who has no connection to the last ruler.
Right. And so it goes, how far do you go with sort of the blood connection? Because if he is designated the heir of the Taiko and everybody just believes it, and even though they kind of know, and you just roll with it, right? That's my question, is how much does it really matter? Because if everybody wants to continue to believe in the fiction, then the fiction becomes reality.
Yeah.
And what if the father pops up one day and says, "Hey, I'm the father. Here's my paternity test right here. We did all the, the things.
I don't think you have to worry about
it's my
that.
child."
At least the
No, I know,
test.
but you know what I mean? Like whatever way he could prove it, like just say, here's proof.
Yeah.
Would it matter? Would it change anything? I don't know.
I think it would. In this society, I think that the Taiko leaving his son as the heir under false pretenses of believing him to be his biological son would nullify the title.
So then everybody would have to reorient to the fact that Taiko was not a good guy, even though they'd have to all turn.
No, that doesn't mean that Taiko is not a good
iron
guy.
filings.
That just means that the Taiko was deceived too, right? Because the Taiko thought it was his
if it could
son.
be on that. Right. Oh, it's a messy situation.
It is messy. Well, let's see what happens next episode.
And continues. I also wonder who's the person hiding in the sun. There seems to be some strong foreshadowing in the first episode when Toranaga described how he admired the Falcon strategy. Right. That is an absolute foreshadowing for it, of hiding in the sun where it couldn't be seen before striking. The obvious person for this seems to be Toranaga himself, but he's been doing anything but hiding in every episode. Characters in Osaka talk about how dangerous he is and how wary they should be of him. Any thoughts? Yeah, Mariko. Was the
absolutely
Nobody saw her
comes
coming
in just to be like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I can't stay for your poetry tournament."
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
"Sorry, I can't stay for your poetry tournament" is the line that takes down an empire. It's it's really good.
I'm leaving tomorrow.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're leaving tomorrow? Well, my liege lord wanted me to go back. Right. That's the impact strike right there.
Right.
Up until that moment. Everybody's happy.
Friendly.
But she says,
"Yep,
you're right. You're absolutely right. It is the poetry line." That's awesome.
where Ishido's like, "Huh?
Oh my god,
huh?"
Yeah. What do you mean you're not going to?
His voice starts getting higher. He's like, "I don't know what's going on."
That's funny. All right. And concludes with a little postscript. Could somebody explain the shaved hairstyles? I've noticed even the Portuguese priest has a strange shaved job. I've tried to look for a pattern in who shaves with rank, age, etc., but I can't find it. Is it just a stylistic choice? I think she's talking about different samurai and some of the retainers and aids and things like that. There is absolutely something to that, and maybe Nate or Abby or somebody else or Davey Mack, I don't know, could write in, or somebody wants to do the internet research for us. That would be awesome. But there is definitely something to do with cutting of the hair and the style that you get to wear, because Yabashige doesn't have it shaved like that.
Right. And neither does Toranaga.
But Omi does.
I think the higher ranked people probably get to keep their hair.
Buntaro doesn't.
I'll tell you what, and if we don't hear back from our other scholars by next week, I'll get you an answer myself. I'll go out and get you an answer myself. Go
get some history. All right. Well, that's it for our feedback. Thanks for writing in, and definitely looking forward to more. Again, if you also just want to jump in to chit chat with some other live humans who are enjoying the heck out of the show, join us on our Discord server. We've got separate threaded channel, little discussion places for each episode. So, you don't accidentally get spoiled and stuff, but it's been a lot of fun chatting over there. Everybody's having a good time. John, what are we talking about now? Our upcoming stuffs.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
I've practiced this a few times this week, so I can start on it. Let's talk about our affiliate programming quick. We've got Radioactive Ramblings, a Fallout podcast, which is growing really fast, and it's covering the newest show on Amazon Prime, Fallout, based on the video games, but it's totally separate from the video games. You don't have to have played them to watch the show. It's a standalone story, and it's apparently very good. I haven't watched it yet, but Aaron and Chase, the two co-hosts, are getting rave reviews for their coverage, and I hope you'll join them over on that feed. And they're, I guess, going to be doing something else soon. We're not sure what else.
I'm just looking at some of their analytics. They're kicking ass.
They are.
They're doing a really good job.
They are.
I don't think a lot of people are covering the show, so I think that's
no, it's their sparkling conversation, David.
It is. Chase is funny. A couple of times he's cracked me up. I haven't been watching them in the middle because I haven't watched all the shows yet, but I've been listening to the intros and the outros. Yeah, Chase is. Yeah. he's got me laughing a few times.
Right. Well,
cool.
You can expect their season 7, the last 2 episodes of the season, very shortly.
Are they all
I think
out?
they already recorded it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you'll expect that shortly, and they're going to do a final season wrap up and listener feedback episode. So get your feedback in while you can. Rings and Rituals is also around.
Yes.
We love Rings and Rituals. Marilyn Arpakila, who I've seen twice this week. Oh, what a lovely week for me. And Dr. Sarah Brown of Signum University. They are doing a rewatch and analysis of season 1 of Rings of Power through the lens of ritual. So they're talking about all of the Tolkien legendarium. They're looking at each episode, seeing the events that happen in it, and trying to see what that says about the peoples of Middle-earth, what that says about the characters. It's a really great, dense season. I know that they're even venturing into other Tolkien subjects. Marilyn was telling me is like they can't help themselves but to talk about like what is magic in Tolkien. So right. a lot of great conversations.
Yeah, I was just gonna say really quickly on Rings and Rituals. Don't think of this as a Rings of Power season 1 sort of recap thing. Think of this as a deep dive into the legendarium of Tolkien.
I agree.
They're just using the show as an entry point, but it then the conversation ranges from there. So don't be shy because I didn't like it that much or I haven't watched it recently. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to talk about ritual.
Right.
So carry on.
We'll Shift Dust. We'll Shift Dust is back. Alicia's doing Beacon 23 season 2. She, as I jested last episode, I know Hugh Howey. She did an interview with Hugh Howey, and that's the author of the books that Beacon 23 is based on. So check that out on her feed. I know she's got some Dune stuff coming, some Star Wars stuff coming, plenty of stuff. So keep an eye out on there, and keep an eye out on our community updates for more updates on her Star Wars project. Properly Howard movie review. I feel like, David, you're the guy to pitch this.
Can I just say that I am genuinely a fanboy of Properly Howard? If Properly Howard wasn't on our network, I'd still listen to the hell out of this stuff. I love these guys. It's hilarious. They're picking up movies that I think are wild. So their current season is Felonies and Fugazis. They picked 10 movies from the 80s and the 90s that are all crime related. Go back. There's a movie draft where they pick their 5 films each, and they have different categories and a whole bunch of stuff. It's really funny. They have just put out a review of Point Break with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, which is a really fun digging into sort of it's not the buddy cop, but it's the adversarial sort of thing. And the surfer, it's a riot. It's absolutely
their breakdown of whether Keanu Reeves is a good actor had me rolling. I was laughing so hard through that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. So next up is Shakedown, which is a 1988 movie about an attorney and a rogue cop that get into some trouble. It's pretty hilarious. It's not Peter Weller. Who's the guy who played RoboCop? I'm blanking names right now.
Are you going to recap each movie to us?
No, but now upcoming after that is Tango and Cash, then Pulp Fiction, then Grosse Point Blank. I think True Romance is in there. My Cousin Vinny. So they got a really wild lineup for this year. So go check them out. And I absolutely their ending credit music. I honestly listen to it from all the way through every single episode. So yeah, I'm cool. A big Properly Howard stan.
We love Properly Howard. We also love Shogun, which we'll be back for the season finale and then a season wrap up. That's our main gig right now. Following that, we're going to go right into our House of the Dragon season 1 rewatch coverage, which should be a lot of fun. You've got a Monkey Man one shot out, David. You've got something coming with X-Men 97.
I'm not sure where we're going to do with that, but Jean and Alicia, we're going to do something for X-Men 97.
You've got another one shot on Civil Warrior about to record. Sometime in the future, you're going to record a one shot with Marilyn on Dick Turpin.
Yes, for sure. And we're going to try to get a Masters of the Air recap in there as well. It was a little bit of a disappointing season, but there's some important things to talk about. And so we just got to get into the scheduling thing. So, all right. And you guys had Halo. Halo came out. You finally got Halo done and out. That was awesome.
It happened.
Very
it happened.
Cool.
It was a lot of fun. We talked, I got to tell you, even if you're not like big into the Halo games, we've introduced a couple segments up front, which are what are we playing and what's the latest in gaming news. And I think those are for everybody, even if you're not a big fan of the games. And we do a spoiler-free pitch of the game and a rating of the game before we actually go into it. So check that out.
And then this one, you tied it in a little bit to the television show.
We did. John pitched it to us, and he accidentally spoiled season 2 for us, but I deleted it from the recording.
Funny. The magic of podcasting.
Indeed.
You guys going to do some Doctor Who, I think, coming up?
Sometime in May when it comes.
Okay.
I think it comes May 10th or 11th. I have to double check the date. But yeah, we got Doctor Who something coming with that. I think we're going to do a preseason, mid-season, things like that. And Silmarillion is coming out this Sunday for the public. It's already out on the Patreon. And on Tuesday, you're going to get Earthsea, and that's already on Patreon as well. So don't forget, you get early access on the Patreon feed.
That's right. Yeah, as soon as they're done, we try to put them there ASAP.
Yep.
Yeah, then we've got the Acolyte, House of the Dragon, The Boys, The Bear. Who knows when Severance is coming back? So a lot of things in our future. A lot of things.
Indeed.
Cool. All right.
Time for some thank yous.
Shout outs.
Yep. Discord server boosters.
Sure.
Opus and the Machine. Oh my gosh. We're both trying to be polite and do it before ourselves. Yeah, I know. Let's have a poetry contest. No, you know what? I've said them enough this week. You give a thank you.
I was going to say we could alternate. I could read
That's
one.
That's okay. It's going to get too confusing with the delays on recording.
Opus and the Machine, Gnarls, Aaron K, Taylor the Thriller, Dork of the Ninjas, Duve71. Thank you very much for making our Discord a better place for all of our community. To our top tier subscribers, be they Supercast or Patreon subscribers, Samartian, Mark H, Michael G, Michelle E, David W, Brian P, Nick W, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V21, Mothership 61, Gnarls, and forever last but never least, Adrienne. Thank you all so very, very, very much for being our anchors, being our support to make all of this wild and wacky thing that we call podcasting available to our community, because it's not just about John and I, but it's all about all of y'all as well. So thank you.
Well, David, after recording
John,
probably like 10 hours of podcast this week, I think I'm going to go have some cha and I'm going to go to bed. So I will see you for the next episode of Shogun.
Night, everybody.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.
Hey listeners, Aaron here. If you're watching Fallout on Amazon Prime Video, then we have just the podcast for you. Radioactive Ramblings has joined the Lorehounds network. We are going to be breaking down the show episode by episode, making far-fetched theories and dropping some tidbits of lore. If you want to hear us ramble, tune into Radioactive Ramblings, linked in the show notes. We hope to have you join us in the wasteland.